exciting to see everybody. This is the
Yay,
very
hi
first
everybody.
7 work in progress.
Hey, oh my God, I'm so nervous.
Oh,
I play
love to
music
see
all
all
the
your
time. Why
smiling
am I
faces.
nervous? I don't know why I'm nervous.
Okay. I think we have everybody in that's coming in for right now. We are recording, so anybody who doesn't want to be recorded, mute yourself now. I will be muting and unmuting. I'm Julia Roberts. I am the host of this event. You can tell it's a very special night because I am wearing earrings. So actually for the first time since
I forgot to put mine on.
you're wearing a collar on your shirt, so that's good. I am going to introduce them one at a time, but we have 6 writers and myself, 7 writers who are going to read works in progress. We have all been in a writing group for the past 5 weeks, which is part of my creative mastery class. And this has been a diligent and amazingly creative group. And they are here to share with you the kinds of things that have been stuck inside them for so long and now are coming out in beautiful and wonderful ways. So we're going to start, because we started each of our 1-hour meetings with a prompt. We're all going to read 1 minute from the same prompt, which was, why do you love those shoes? So I won't give you much of an introduction in the 1 minute read in, but I'll give you a little bit more introduction in the 7 minute read in. So all told, will probably be an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes. What I'm going to recommend is that if you go in your upper right-hand corner, you can put it in gallery view or speaker view. Now, gallery view is like the Brady Bunch. You know, you've got rows and rows and columns. And speaker view looks more like a Hollywood clapperboard, right? It's got a little 3 dots across a big square. And that way you'll be able to see the speaker larger. You'll be able to, appreciate there as they read. I will be muting people for the most part. But feel free to clap and laugh, and I will be unmuting you at the end of each person's reading so that you can respond and they can get feedback and that kind of thing. If during the thing you want to type to the writer, feel free to type in the chat and just say, love that line, or remember, these are works in progress. These guys would love your feedback and your
so I did before.
Your point of view. Okay, what else do I want to say? I had another thing, but oh well. Okay, well, I'm sure it'll come to me right in the middle of somebody else's 1 minute. Because that's how I am. Anyway, all right. So I'm going to mute most people, and feel free to write anything you want in the chat. Feel free to, and at the end, I'll unmute you so you can clap and whatever, So let's start with Diane Irving. She's a children's writer, and she is going to give us 1 minute on why you love those shoes. Diane, I have to unmute yourself. Are you okay with that? I'll mute all, and you unmute you. Okay.
Okay,
Now, yeah.
okay, I'm good to go. Okay, so this was from the prompt, why you love those shoes. I immediately thought of my son's first little pair of soft leather shoes. They were adorable in their 2-toned blue with little red fire trucks embroidered on the toes. After he takes his first steps, those cute little socks will no longer do. He would much prefer his bare feet and wiggling toes, but he looks so grown up in those cute little shoes. I love all the things that they represent, and although at the time I may have wished he would sit still just for a moment, I still think fondly of those cute little shoes.
Yay!
That was lovely.
That was great, Diane.
Thanks.
Love it.
Nice one, Mom. Nice.
Julia, you're mute.
That was some of my best material. As I said, you mightn't have noticed, but Diane is Australian, and we go now to Daniel, who's Canadian. And again, 1 minute on those shoes. Daniel, you have to unmute yourself, okay?
I'm not muted. Am I muted now?
No.
No, you guys can hear me.
Yes.
How I love that pair of shoes. Actually, I didn't. I was thankful for them because they were a gift. And they weren't shoes either. They were sandals. I had been in India for 7 weeks. The first 4 weeks, I spent the last of my money. And for the last 3 weeks, I had been living my dream. I was a beggar in India. I climbed down off the back of the truck in which I had been hitchhiking, very careful where I stepped because I was in bare feet and had no glasses. My sandals had fallen apart about a week before. I did not want to injure my feet. They were still tender and unfamiliar with their new friend, the Indian subcontinent. A shopkeeper at the truck stop saw my need and presented me with a pair of sandals. I was thankful for his kindness, but I didn't love the sandals because they raised a blister. The blister got infected in the floodwaters. Sorry, I only had a minute.
Hanging.
That was
Great story.
Great.
More.
more. Hey, you're muted again, Julia. This is so hard, I understand.
Don't we love this Zoom?
Yeah, you're muted, Julia.
Yeah.
We still can't hear
I'm
you.
gonna pitch a fit before this thing is over. Okay, I'm not muted now, right?
No,
No,
you're
we
good.
can hear you.
And I get a nickel for every time someone asks, "Am I muted now?"
Yeah.
Anyway,
This is
we're moving
so
to
hard to
Melody.
believe.
Melody
it's my
Wright is her online, and
Okay.
Mary Prinz is her real name. I'm gonna mute everybody, Melody, and then you unmute yourself. Okay?
Okay. This is my 1 minute.
You're muted.
In San Jose, California, with my friend in, oh, I'm muted. Wait a minute.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Am I muted?
No, you're not.
I'm unmuted. Okay. Can I start over? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I got confused. Okay. I was at an Eagles concert at HP Pavilion in San Jose, California with my friend in 2001. The seats were in the upper section, but not too high up, and we could see and hear everything. It was about the third time I'd seen the Eagles in concert, and I was so excited to be there. We all sang along with the familiar old songs they played, like Peaceful Easy Feeling, Lion Eyes, Take It Easy, Tequila Sunrise, and so many others. But after every single song, this one bozo right behind us yelled, "Those shoes! What about those shoes?" It became funny, and he drew the attention of a bunch of people who sat around him. At least he didn't yell it during the songs. We chuckled when he yelled. Then about 3/4 of the way through the concert, the Eagles played and sang "Those Shoes." Why had I forgotten about that song? The "Those Shoes" dude went completely insane. And then we all yelled and cheered just because he finally got his wish.
Oh, we've just been joined by 13 more people.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, Mom.
Yay.
Okay. Everybody's unmuted, so you can, give your regards.
Yay.
We've just been joined by 13 more people. Just let me bring you up to speed a little bit. We're doing 1 minute prompts because we had a class together in which we started every morning with a prompt. So this is one of our favorites. It was said, "Why do you love those shoes?" We've heard from 3 people, and we're going next to Pamela Gordon. Pamela, I will mute everybody and then unmute you, and then you can start. Okay.
Jackie heard Edith before she saw her. She was in the end room of the railroad flat, trying to capture the milky light on the storefronts across the way. Edith clipped into the studio. "Why do you like those shoes?" Jackie asked. "You know why I like them," Edith answered. The shoes reminded Jackie of louche silent film stars and of the Mary Janes her mother forced her to wear, along with itchy crinolines under dresses. Edith improvised an unrhythmic tap around the easel. Jackie rolled her eyes. She wore a denim shirt, sleeves hanging off the shoulders, tails almost to her knees, splotched with paint as was her hair, face, and hands. I know you're working, Edith conceded, and nothing I can do will drag you away, even putting on hats and parading downtown for sodas at the lunch counter. It's 1980, Edith, not 1930. You won't be discovered. In one quick motion, Edith crossed her arms and lifted her shift over her head. She stood with one hand on her hip and one toe pointed forward. She wore a bikini. Paint me, she said.
Wow.
Woo! Ah, yeah!
Very nice.
That was cool.
Yay, Pam! Hooray! More.
We are on Dean. Dean's another inveterate New Yorker. Here we go. I'm going to mute all and then unmute you, Dean.
Okay. Trust I am unmuted.
You are indeed.
Okay, I just want to say that this happens in the middle of a, we'll call it a crime novel, but it's really a comic crime novel.
This is your those shoes thing?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. Shelley announces they have a visitor. It's their favorite Miami cop, Detective Lebomowitz. He lumbers in and Shelley wonders aloud, is there cop speak for those shoes? Those shoes cops wear? Clunky shoes, heavy shoes. How do they run in them? Cops can always be expected to run, chase suspects, get out of the way of gunfire, climb ladders, scale fences, or does that just happen on TV and in movies? Lebomowitz knows, let Shelley talk. Shelley loves to talk. The more he talks, the looser his lips. Blabbermouths. Braggarts like Shelley need time to spin their tails before he can extract any quality information from them. Shelley peppers Lebomowitz with endless questions. Could he get cheap knockoffs made in Venezuela, maybe Indonesia or somewhere, and sell them to cops or police departments? Then he postulated, one of Shelley's favorite words, about how to do this, how his crew, the Seabreeze gang, could make a killing off of this. Lebomowitz interrupted. Shelley, maybe it's not a good idea to talk about making a killing when talking with a cop. A killing, Shelley? Come on. Shelley being Shelley ignored that. Detective Lebomowitz had to control himself, keep himself from laughing at this jamoke.
Please enter your password.
Who's that? Okay, thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
These people look like they're all freaking.
Oh, somebody
Okay,
had to enter a password. That was good, Dean.
that was nice. Very nice.
One. Woo.
Okay, we have second to last, Mary Lou. Reading.
Okay.
Oh, reading from those shoes. Yes.
Yes.
I'm unmuting. I'm going to mute all and then unmute you. So just give me 1 sec for that to take place. There you go.
Okay. Divine Intervention and Saddle Shoes. One sweaty August evening, while my brothers and I played Red Rover with the neighborhood kids, it happened. Every workday, our fathers drove home, knowing dinner was waiting for them, as surely as our mothers anticipated their arrival, anticipating a break from the busy day. Trapped in this daily ritual was our mother. She was brilliant, earning degrees in social services and classical music summa cum laude. She recited poetry of the gods, played Mozart flawlessly, and taught us how to find the constellations, along with telling us their magical stories. And she always wore saddle shoes, my favorite. But put our dear mother in the kitchen, and well, one needed divine intervention. Mom shouted to come in for supper, and reluctantly the three of us ran toward the house, elbowing each other. We tumbled into the kitchen table, looking sheepishly at Dad, who was standing in the hallway like a shadow. The kitchen's aroma captivated our senses with scrumptiousness. The table was still shaking, spilling muffins every which way. Dad caught a few before they rolled off. We stacked them back in the basket, licking our buttery fingers with smiles. We looked at Mom. She was a mess. Yellow powder and yellow splatters covered her beautiful black and white saddle shoes. They traced all the way up to the tip of her nose and glasses, yellow powder and sticky stuff. Our lives changed forever, most delightfully. Mom had discovered Gypsy Mix.
Oh.
What's that?
Very nice. So,
Yay!
for those of you who are just joining, we have been listening to 1-minute prompts. We are going to have 7 minutes from each reader. I am the last of the prompt readers. I'm Julia Roberts. This is 7 Works in Progress. We just were joined by a bunch of people, so I want to make sure everybody's up to speed. So I'm going to mute everybody. Because somebody's having a good time. Okay. Those shoes. Florence burst through the back door into the small farm kitchen. She had run all the way across both fields when she saw the doctor's wagon. Anna Mary would be beside herself. She saw her brother Everett slumped at the tin-top table. What did the doc say? Is Mac going to be all right? She asked him. Everett looked up. He's been hallucinating, sweating, panting, powerful sick. Diphtheria. Everett shook his head. It is the year of our Lord 1932 and there's nothing they can do? He's smart, Flory, like no other 2-year-old I've known. Doc says tonight's the turning point. If he lives through the night, he'll live. Right now, there's not a blame thing we can do. Just wait. Now, don't tell Anna Mary all that. She's already tied up in knots. I'll go see how I can help, Florence said. In the corner of the room, she saw Mac's shoes. She looked over at Everett, whose head was once again slumped in his hands. She crept over to get the shoes, so small in her hands, scuffed from all his tomfoolery, walking, falling, kicking. She wiped his bright smile and sunny laughter from her mind and carefully put the shoes out of sight, high up on the Hoosier. Anna Mary didn't have to suffer seeing those shoes in the morning if Mac himself didn't live to see the dawn.
Yeah.
Cool.
So one of the things we loved about that is that we all took such different routes. in that one prompt.
Not true. I know of 3 calls they've received already. And a Southern gentleman, a Cockney chimney.
Okay, mostly I'm gonna mute then. Sorry. I don't know who's that is, but all right. So now comes the meat of our program. Basically, we're going to hear each person for 7 minutes. Now, it is traditional in these readings of this sort, if you've been to many writing conferences, that 7 minutes is strictly adhered to. And the reason being is in deference to all of you people who are listening, but also because the discipline of requiring somebody to stick to 7 minutes means that people have to edit. And editing is easy for some people and horrifying for others. And yet it is something that has to happen. So we are strict about the 7 minutes. At the end of 7 minutes, I will play my alarm right up at the microphone. So at least the reader will be able to hear it. At that point, they'll get 30 more seconds. And at the end of 30 seconds, I will begin to applaud and unmute you all so you can applaud them off the stage. This is not unkind. This is not cruelty. And it's not even rude. This is something we do for them out of love and kindness. And they should, if they've prepared well, have a second plan for how to cut that short if it went way too long, like so that they can jump to the end. But it is all in preparation of being a great writer, because both divergent and convergent thinking are necessary for good writing. I know that's Greek to a lot of you, but some of you who've been with me a while know what the heck that was. What I mean by that. Okay, so we're going to go in the exact same order, starting with Diane. And just a little background, I said Diane was an Aussie, as was evident. And she is a children's story writer. And 5 weeks ago, she said she was rather stuck. She had the basic storyline, but we sat down and wrote together every day for 5 weeks. Now, that might not seem like much of a thing. You just get on Zoom, say hi, and then start writing. But it turned out to be the very thing that we each needed to get momentum, to get accountability, and to get going. And so she is very happy with her outcome of this course, which is a completed, what is it, an outline? Yes, a completed outline. And today, with a deadline on an audience, we're going to hear Diane Irving's best work. Very nice. I'm so excited. Here we go. Diane, I'll set the thing, but you can start anytime.
Okay, so I'm a children's writer, so, you know, I write, it's a picture book. So in the absence of not having the imagery for you, I've put in a few extra words. And also in the time frame, I was looking at making sure I fit the whole story in with this time frame, so there might be a few plot flaws and all of that. But my storybook is about Tulip, who's a kangaroo, and she goes to Manhattan in pursuit of her dreams to be a rockette. So, thump, thump, thumpity thump. Tulip was spinning and dancing and kicking her legs as high as they could go. Tulip would kick one leg at a time, which was no easy feat for a bouncy kangaroo. Her long paw-like feet made a thump, thump, thump sound or something like that. Maybe it was her happy tail. Tulip was going to New York City as she always dreamed of becoming a rockette. Tulip danced all the way to the Qantas check-in counter with her suitcases bouncing along behind her. "G'day," the check-in man said. "Where are you going?" "New York City," Tulip sang. "Have I the right length?" She whipped out her tape measure to show him. 10 inches this way, 8 inches that way. "Check out my kicks," she said. Thump, thump, thumpity thump. "I'm going to be a rockette. Start spreading the news," she sang. He looked rather thoughtful. He got out a big rubber stamp and whacked her passport. Walkabout. "Good luck," he waved. New York City was shimmering with fairy lights, and Tulip could hardly contain her excitement. She couldn't stop bouncing her tail and went hopping here and there. She loved Saks Fifth Avenue, Times Square, and Grand Central Station. Well, that was just grand. The yellow taxi cabs looked like they were in a parade, honking their horns at her as she hopped on by. Tulip loved Central Park and the great lawns, spacious, and it reminded her of home. She waved to the horse and carriage, clip-clopping along. The friendly street vendor offered her warm-smelling nuts, and people smiled as they strolled on by. Tulip felt warm inside, like New York City was giving her a great big hug. Tulip was so jubilant when she arrived at Radio City Hall, its banner of light shining so bright, the crowds of happy shoppers jostling snug and cozy in their warm winter coats. Thump, thump, thumpity thump. Tulip was wide-eyed with awe as she hopped inside. It was glamorous and velvety. "Name," said a long-nosed lady behind the auditions desk. "Tulip," she said, thump, thump, thumpity thump. "I think you, a kangaroo, might be in the wrong place," the lady said. Tulip kicked her high legs and chanted, "I have the right leg length, thump, thump, thumpity thump." "They," she said, pointing to the girls, "have the right leg length." And Tulip stared all the way up their long, unswervy legs. "Crikey," she thought. The girls and Tulip lined up on stage. The lady in charge clapped her hands with authority. "Straight line, girls. Good high kicks," she said. Waving to the maestro, the music began and everybody started kicking. Tulip did her very best kicks. Thump, thump, thumpity thump, her happiness vibrating the theatre. Soon she realized the music had stopped. All the girls stared down the line, giggling at Tulip and her funny-looking legs. The clapping lady said, "Tulip, kangaroo, step out." Tulip stepped out of the line feeling chunky and furry and small. She saw the side door with the lonely sign that said exit and patted her way out. Tulip lost all her bounce and there was no more thumping. Taxis honked furiously for her to walk faster, and people pushed and rushed by, and the tall buildings started to look a little mean. Tulip wandered over to Rockefeller Plaza and watched the skaters glide around the ice rink. The enormous tree looked so beautiful and bright. The loudspeakers played New York, New York, and she started tapping her feet with delight. Soon she was kicking in her own special way, thump, thump, thumpity thump, her kicks as high as she could go. The crowd started forming around Tulip, and as she danced, people clapped and cheered and tapped their feet, thump, thump, thumpity thump. The lady from the Radio City Hall smiled and walked straight up to Tulip and said, "Tulip, I wanted you to step out, not outside, step out in front of the line. We want you to be our new special addition to the Rockettes." Tulip was tickled and danced and kicked and spun with glee. She kicked the whole way back to Radio City Hall and realized you could dance in your own special way. As the curtain lifted, the crowd cheered for the very first ever Thumpette.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was, yes. So
That
was lovely.
she didn't finish she didn't even do her 7 minutes, which is nice.
I can totally picture that.
Yeah.
A Thumpette! Oh my gosh, Diane, you're amazing.
It was great.
Thank you, Sarah. I can hear you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. That was really wonderful.
Thank you.
Good picture.
Diane, that was so great.
Hey, Diane. Hey, Diane.
Yay.
Thank you.
I don't know who's got the radio on, but okay. I'll take a.
Buy now and choose how you pay along the way, because your hope should be accomplished.
Diane Love in the
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you can continue to give that love to Diane on the chat. I think that painted such a lovely picture. It was so nice to listen to. We now have Daniel. I don't see your little face, but I'm sure you're in here somewhere. Oh, here you are. Okay, good. There are 61 people here, so I just think a little moment of appreciation for all of you who've shown up today and to witness. I'm going to unmute you. I'm sorry, Daniel. Daniel's like my little brother. Help me, help me. Anyway, so just a little bit about Daniel. He's Canadian, as we said. 5 weeks ago, he was struggling to get down to a memoir he's been writing for a long time called Jumping in the Deep End. And he, in this time, transformed from writing for friends and family to this idea that this is something that people want to hear from. And we've heard from Daniel just in writing here and there enough to say that we would totally agree. So Daniel's reading The Road to Kabul, or Kabul, I guess you say. And you're unmuted, so you can go at will, and I'll set your timer. But you don't have to.
The way they pronounced it in Afghanistan is Kabul.
Okay.
The Road to Kabul, this is from my memoir, spring 1973. There is one main road that runs from Europe west to east through Afghanistan to China. It's the old Silk Road that Marco Polo followed. There are 3 cities on that road in Afghanistan. Traditionally, the central government controls this road and the 3 cities. Tribal groups control the rest of Afghan territories. The 3 cities on the central road are Herat, Kandahar, and Kabul. The road goes south from Kabul through the Khyber Pass into Pakistan and continues on into India. There I would seek enlightenment, the purpose of my grand journey. Fairly early in the morning, around May 13th, I was hitchhiking on the outskirts of Kandahar, heading east for Kabul. People had warned me, you shouldn't hitchhike in Afghanistan, too dangerous. I had just nodded. I knew how to take care of myself. Why was I so confident? I was a seasoned hitchhiking traveler. I had handled a few difficult situations before. Just a couple of days before, in Kandahar, I had handled myself. I was walking down a street and saw a house under construction, so I stopped to watch. They had a cement mixer in the front yard and were carrying buckets of cement around to the back of the house where they were pouring them into forms. After watching for a bit, I grabbed a bucket, filled it with cement, hoisted it onto my shoulder as I had seen the workers do, and carried it back and poured it into a form. The workers there all grinned and laughed, and I carried several more buckets back and forth. There was a great sense of goodwill, and the workers enjoyed this long-haired Western tourist joining them in their work. Something less pleasant and comradely began to happen around the front of the house. A boy, with a few of his friends watching, began to play Hassle the Tourist. I had seen this before. The object of the game is to bug, frighten, confuse the tourist, and maybe get them to lose it in some way. As I was carrying the bucket of cement on my shoulder, the boy was picking at my wallet in my back pocket. I would take the balancing hand off the bucket and swat his hand away, but when I put my hand back up again to balance, he would again try to grab my wallet. He did this several times as I carried the cement back and forth, and his friends thought it was very funny. I saw one older boy watching, and I felt that he didn't approve of this. I made my move. The kid reached for my wallet. I reached into my pocket and handed it to him and continued carrying my bucket of cement down the path. I dumped my cement, and sure enough, the older boy came running in and reported to the workers. They barked an order and he ran off. A few minutes later, he dragged the little bugger to me. The boy apologetically gave me my wallet back. So I had confidence that I could handle anything that might come up. I was a man filled with peace and love. I can handle anything. So I'm hitchhiking for Kabul on the outskirts of Kandahar. I figured it would take 1 or 2 days, depending on the rides. A big truck stopped, mostly empty in the back. The driver asked for money, naming a price. I said no money in Farsi. I knew how to say no money in several languages by this time. The driver spoke back in English. He knew more English than I knew Farsi. He argued with me a bit, but I was firm. Finally, he told me to get in the back. He indicated that he was going to Kabul. Great. I climbed in the back and sat on some sacks of grain. The truck lurched into gear and started down the pothole road. I was happy in getting closer to my India goal. Look out, God. Dan Bennett is coming. The road was flat, no major hills all the way to Kabul. We were traveling across a desert plain with dry, brown, eroded mountains in the distance. I wondered how anything could live out there. Nothing green, just different shades of brown. The hills closer to the road shimmered in the heat. The breeze in the back of the truck kept me comfortable. I remember thinking that this was the kind of terrain that Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad were all used to. Desert hills like these had birthed 3 great religions. Well, I was out to find the source behind all religions. I believe that they all came from the same underlying reality. I was out to find that reality. I had a name for it, cosmic consciousness. In the afternoon, the truck pulled to the edge of the road. A small family had flagged him down. A man negotiated with the driver and gave him some money. Then he and a woman and a boy of about 10 years climbed into the back of the truck with me. They had some bundles, including a large tent with them. The truck resumed its travel. If my hippie friends could see me now, traveling across the desert in the back of a truck with a nomad family. The father and son were dressed in rough clothing and had turbans on their heads. They used the turbans by unraveling them a bit and wrapping the lower portion of their faces with the cloth as a protection against the dry desert air. The woman had a headscarf, which she also wrapped around the lower part of her face. The woman wore a lot of jewelry. She had multiple necklaces, bracelets, and rings. Much of it appeared to be silver. We sang songs and I played my flute. Then miscommunication. The man tried to get me to buy a dagger that he showed me. I declined to buy it. Then his wife gave me one of her rings. I put it on. Everything seemed to be fine for a while, but then things got ugly. The man started threatening me with the dagger. I gave the ring back. He seemed insulted. Probably they were trying to sell me the ring, which I had thought was a gift. The level of anger escalated, very uncomfortable in the back of the truck with the dagger waving about. Night was falling. We stopped at an oasis, which consisted of a few shacks and a small dirty pond of water. The driver asked me if I'd like to ride in the cab. Yes, I would like to ride in the cab. Relieved, I grabbed my bag from the back and climbed in. We started out on the road to Kabul again. It was dark now, and the headlights lit up the road ahead. I started to relax. The driver had basic English, and we conversed. We talked about world politics and how tough Afghans were. Then, I'm not sure if I got this right, he invited me to come up to his village and marry his sister. Very beautiful, he said. I declined the offer. The driver asked me if I'd like to smoke some hashish. Sure. So he loaded up a chillum, a kind of Afghan pipe, and we smoked, passing it back and forth. I got a good buzz. The next part is foggy, but to the best of my ability, this is what happened. The driver asked me if he could try on my glasses. I said, sure, and he put them on. He said he could see way better with them on. He wouldn't give them back. We were arguing, and I was trying to get them off his head. Suddenly, there was another truck coming directly at us on the road, and the driver swerved to miss him. I swear he passed him on the wrong side of the road. This scared the shit out of me. I stopped arguing with him about my glasses. Realized he wasn't going to return them. Probably figured this was payment for the ride. We rode on in silence, and after we began to enter another area.
Look at what you get.
Daniel.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Hey,
Okay,
Daniel,
next
that was
we have
interesting.
you all. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
Almost made it to the end.
Did you ever get your glasses back? That's all I want to know.
One paragraph to go.
We're at 7:45. Anyway, that was very interesting. We could have listened longer, of course.
Did you get your glasses back? That's a one question.
No, I went through India without my glasses.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh,
Wow.
I had nothing.
I had to know if you
Down to a blistered foot.
Okay. So mute everybody. You can continue to give Daniel love in the chat. The sentence or something that stood out for you that you really were struck by, let him know. The readers really like to know what sung out.
Yeah.
I'm going to mute everybody, and then I will undo our friend Melody, whom I call Melody because she's Melody Writes Online, but she's also Mary Crins to people who know her IRL. And Melody writes personal blogs and essays about the world of ukulele, the 1960s, everything Beatles. She also was a single mother and raised her 4 kids with whom she's still very close. And a lot of that informs much of her writing. So today we're going to hear from her, take a sad song and make it better, take 2. And you can start any time, Melody. I will get the timer going. Thank you.
Okay, this is fall 1969, San Francisco, and it's part of my memoir about growing up in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s. For once, the bright sun shined down on us as we played volleyball for PE class at Presidio Junior High School. The salty air felt cool, reminding me that the ocean was close by. It was just another lousy day at school for me. The sunken schoolyard with the brown walls yet again reminded me of prison. Junior high might as well have been prison. We had to wear these ugly blue gym suits which morphed into bloomers. My mother had gotten mine way too big and the bottom part just hung instead of wrapping around my legs like they were supposed to. We wore white sweatshirts over the blue suits, which didn't help much. We were also forced to embroider our names on our gym suits and sweatshirts. This was a requirement. And mine looked the worst because I was lousy at that sort of thing. The letters were different sizes and it looked like a first grader had sewed my name on. I hated PE and I hated volleyball. I loved to ride my bike long distances and run, but volleyball was a special kind of hell for me. Number 1, I didn't like these girls. And number 2, I was lousy at it. I never did well with any sports involving a ball, maybe because I'm blind in one eye. I tried to remain as invisible as possible until the volleyball came right at me. When I looked up for a split second, the sun shined right in my eyes and the ball looked about 10 times bigger than it really was. I moved out of the way to keep from getting hit. "Why didn't you hit the ball?" a tall, dark-skinned girl with an afro yelled at me. "Yeah, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you hit it?" other girls said. Soon, half the girls on my team were yelling at me. The sun was in my eyes. The entire class laughed at me like I was some sort of freak. Oh, the sun was in my eyes too. The tall girl with the afro taunted me. I had enough. All the stress from the evil stepfather and mom being possessed by him and this new school bubbled up inside me. I could feel the anger course through my body into my face, which felt hot. Leave me alone, I yelled back. I knew I should be afraid of the girl because all the others would back her up, but I didn't care anymore. Just like when I get mad at David Harrell, the kid in the neighborhood. Make me! The tall girl stood up straight while others surrounded her. I'm not sure what came over me next. I yelled and I charged at her like a wild animal. I pushed her and she pushed me, and the next thing you know, we were rolling around on the hard cement. Fight, fight, the girls yelled, and the teacher blew her whistle. I felt the hard cement beneath me, and I could smell the girl's breath on my face and a sting of pain as her fist hit my mouth. Break it up, girls, the PE teacher said. Across the way, the other girls helped the mean girl up. My lip bled a little, and her nose bled, and we looked as if we'd been in a mud bath. It's her fault, one girl said, pointing at me. She charged me for no reason. The mean girl wiped her face and freaked out when she saw a little blood on her hands. You're crazy. Go to the office now, Mary, the PE teacher said, but I stammered. Then I shook my head and walked towards the school while everyone watched. I opened the door to the school and trudged in with my head down, still in my PE uniform. The hallway was dark and dreary like a dungeon, and I could feel my own breath. I had to endure a harsh conversation with the assistant dean of the school, and I tuned out most of it. Since I've never seen you in here before, consider this a warning, was the main thing I heard. Oh, good, at least they weren't going to call my mom or my evil stepfather. He sent me back into the schoolyard and said I was benched for the rest of PE. Good. I'd rather be benched and play volleyball with those crazy girls. I stopped at the locker room and changed back into my regular clothes. For once, the locker room was peaceful and quiet. No judgments on whether we had enough cleavage to wear bras and what kinds of clothes we wore. Just me changing my clothes. I trudged back outside into the bright sun and the salty air and shuffled over to the bench, sitting as far away as possible from my PE class, but where the teacher could still see me. I fought back tears. You cannot cry because then they'll know they won, I thought. I laughed at all the girls when at least 100 seagulls decided to make their descent from the rooftop. One never knew that would happen. The seagulls were unpredictable. Everyone ran for cover because they didn't want to get bombed by bird crap. I watched them fly towards the ocean or the San Francisco Bay or wherever they go. I could feel and see their power. There is power in numbers, I thought. I didn't leave the bench when all the girls left for the locker room. I think they all pretty much forgot about me by that time. Then I noticed a tattered paperback book sitting on the bench not far from me. I picked it up and looked at it, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I opened it and started to read. Suddenly, I was caught up in the world of Ponyboy, Dally, and Johnny. Ponyboy had it tough as a 14-year-old who lived with his brothers because his parents died. The foghorns blared as I continued to read, and the schoolyard emptied out. A couple of seagulls swooped down to the garbage cans, but I kept reading. I felt as if I was part of the main character, Ponyboy, and he was a part of me, and the book spoke to me. The sun began to set, and dark shadows made the schoolyard look more mysterious and scary, but I didn't care. I didn't stop until I finished the entire book from beginning to end. By that time, it was almost dark, and everyone had most likely left the school, even the teachers. I knew I'd be in horrible trouble for getting home so late, but I'd get yelled at for scaring my mother because no one had any idea where I was. But I didn't care. I smiled to myself as I grabbed my school books and headed towards the street outside the schoolyard. I stuck the tattered paperback into my book bag. Maybe someday I'd find out who left it there for me to find. I wanted to thank whoever the person was because suddenly I felt okay and I walked faster than I had earlier. My lips still hurt a little, but who cares? If Ponyboy and the gang could get through everything in life, so could I. I'll stay golden just like you, I thought. Ponyboy reminded me that there's strength in numbers, that I didn't have to battle the bad stuff alone. It turned out to be a great day after all.
Oh, that was
Great.
fun.
Well done.
Yeah, Mom.
Bravo.
Oh, great.
I'm so proud of you. You
Right,
still have 19
yeah.
seconds on your.
Yeah.
And it's under 7 minutes. Did I make it under 7 minutes?
It was.
No,
It was. That was some serious editing.
Wait, how much time was left?
17 seconds. 19.
Wow,
Oh my
perfect.
God. It was way over. It was like 8 minutes and a half. I had to cut the heck out of it.
You know what? But it read so tight. So that's great. It really, couldn't you feel it?
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
I
So let me just tell you guys something who are listening. I am not a writing teacher. I know that's what it sounds like, but I'm not. I'm a creativity teacher. I really only help people go about what's blocking them, what's keeping them from getting to their best ideas, etc. So I haven't actually heard this writing. This is the first time I'm hearing most of these people's 7 minutes. And it's fun, very much fun for me too. Okay, so we're going to go now to Pamela Gordon. I'm muting you all again. Hang on a second, Pamela. So Pamela said 5 weeks ago she was ricocheting back and forth, we all know that feeling, between numerous unfinished pieces in various stages of finish. Poems, essays, stories, and a memoir. In the past 5 weeks, and we were very happy about this one, she completed and published an essay on medium.org, which actually, Pamela, when you're done, you could put the link in the chat and people could find it. It was really nice. I'll unmute you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you like a child, better seen than heard. So, and she attributes her momentum and courage coming from the 5 week class. So that being said, let's hear from Pamela, and we are hearing what, Pamela? An excerpt from her memoir called Take This Longing.
Hi, everybody. So glad that you're here. Thanks for being here and coming to listen to us. I'm reading, as Julia said, from a memoir in progress called Take This Longing. The memoir is written in a traditional Japanese form called haibun. And haibun is a mixture of haiku and prose. So I'm going to read the beginning of chapter 3, and that starts with a haiku. Chapter 3, Chair. Objects belonging once to them, their presence and absence where I dwell. My grandfather's chair sits in the crook of the room by the window. I know my grandfather only through the stories my mother has told me about him. He died before I was born. His chair presided over my parents' bedroom. My father draped his pants over the back at the end of each day, his pockets emptied of cigarettes, handkerchief, matchbooks, change, tokens, ticket stubs, candy wrappers in a Rorschach on the dresser. One day my mother asked, "Do you want the chair?" That's how it came to me. The chair by the window that I so revere, that is my friend, my lookout onto the world I am cocooning myself away from, is where I write most of the haiku throughout the year. On the wall across from the chair hangs a painting of men in a deep, hollowed out fishing trawler, hauling in a net full of catch from a roiling yellow sea. The fishermen's hands are unpainted pencil sketches, promising strength. My uncle died in a car crash, leaving the painting unfinished. I know my uncle also only through stories. He too died before I was born. Furniture from dead relatives punctuate other areas of my apartment. The secretary desk from my father, the low 3-drawer dresser from one grandmother that I use as a night table, the china closet that held court in the other grandmother's living room, the grandmother who was married to the grandfather of the chair. They each died well after I was born. They were here on earth in body with time enough for me to love them in person, to learn from them, to miss them still, to absorb the frustrations of their lives. The furniture and the painting tether me to the presence of my ancestors, to whom I feel a responsibility. It has been my task to speak to them, speak for them. No one assigned me this job. No one hired me to do this. They are not here to tell less thwarted stories, to protest my version of them as having clipped wings and strangled voices. Why do I feel compelled to tell sad tales? My grandfather Peter was a prisoner in Russia during World War I. He was a pacifist who did not believe in fighting, but he was conscripted. As my mother tells it, he stepped across the Russian border, laid his weapon down, and was taken, as he knew he would be, in that pitiless Eastern European way. Knowing how to read, he made himself useful in the prison camp, translating documents and reading correspondence out loud. I picture him a man in the camp when my mother tells me how the prisoners ate from a communal bowl. The ferocious grabbing with grimy hands for minimal food ruined my grandfather's digestion for the rest of his life. But if he came to New York when he was 20, as I've heard, was he 15 during the war? Time is slippery. Age, profession, street names, the items we use to define ourselves, turn right at the prisoner of war camp, are swept into corners, under carpets, onto curbs by history. My grandfather arrived in a city where his native language was not tolerated. Magyar, as Hungarian is called by Hungarians, is alien even in the region where it is spoken, since it does not have roots in any European tongue. Once here, Peter taught himself English by reading the newspaper and using a dictionary at the same time. An anecdote I share with my newly arrived to the Bronx immigrant students. When I take my young daughters to Ellis Island, its enormous dome building that, empty, eerily encapsulates the souls of all who pass through it, I find his name on the computer manifest. Peter Ungerleider, nationality, Hebrew, age of arrival, 27. Archival proof that he wasn't a teenager in the prison camp, a step towards separating family lore and fact. His last name, Ungerleider, had 4 syllables when he boarded the ship, but the last 2 were chopped off by the time he made it to shore, assigning my mother fellowship with Felix Unger of Odd Couple fame years later, with whom she shared an obsession with order. Ungerleider, according to a genealogical source, originated in Germany. The name then migrated to Hanuszfaru, Hungary, now Slovakia, and means starving people or unfortunate. In the photos I have of Peter, he wears wire-rimmed glasses, confirming the claim that his eyesight was poor. In other pictures, his skin has turned dark brown in the sun. He was short. He left 3 sisters behind in Budapest. My mother says it the Magyar way, the S and SH, Budapest. He was a printer there after the war, before he came to the States. Printing in Europe in the early decades of the century was done by hand. He would have placed single blocks of metal type onto plates to make up words and sentences, then hand cranked the large machines that rolled the newsprint over the type. It was detailed work, meticulous. It necessitated focus and care. When he found his business feet in New York, he opened his own shop as an upholsterer. He made drapes before they could be bought ready-made in big box stores, and he installed them for women in their living rooms. But his marriage license, dated 1923, states his profession as artist. The one painting of his that remains, finished, unlike his son's, hangs in my mother's bedroom, a landscape of blurred greens and browns. On an afternoon during a weekly visit to my once vital and now bedridden mom, a beam of light spears through the bedroom window, spotlighting the canvas, an annunciation. Daddy is visiting me, she says. He is still so much with her, almost 70 years after his heart attack. The dead do not leave us. I tell her I sense him too. She says, I knew you would understand.
There you go. Perfect.
That's great. This is the first time I'm hearing some of the work too.
Well, I think all of it.
Pamela.
Great use of language.
Thanks, Daniel.
Many turns of phrase.
Daniel, you are sending the lovely things you're saying to Pamela, but you're sending them to me instead of to her or to everyone. So, Pamela, Like a Rorschach, Daniel says. Beautiful.
Yeah, time is slippery. I love that.
Good. Time is slippery. Yeah. So anyway.
So many little turns of phrase that
I see Sigrid said hi,
grab
train
me.
master.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really moving.
You get it?
Ooh. And okay, you can continue to send love to Pamela in particular. If something stood out as an image or a sentence, it's very helpful to hear that kind of thing from a listener. I'm going to mute you all, and we're going to go to Dean Landsman. Dean is going to read the Pineapple Street Trust. And Dean is one of those people, and I would imagine among the of us here, there are 10 like this who've always been told they should write a book. Anybody can relate to that? You should write a book, right? And if you listen to Dean talk, it's not surprising. So snippets, paragraphs, pages, even chapters have made their way into his life, and recently they've grown. And so we look forward to hearing from you, Dean. I'm going to mute everybody in 1 second, and then you'll be unmuted.
What did you think of your mom's story?
Okay, I trust I can be heard.
You are gone. You are going. I'll set the timer, but you start anytime you're ready.
Okay, I also want to tell Pamela I thought that was great. And some of hers dovetails time-wise with what I'm about to read. The original plan had been for Herschel to leave when he had enough money to pay his fare, to leave Freda with half the money for hers. Over 2 years, he would send her money. His father would give her money. She would earn money, her family too, all for her to make her way to America on another steering ship. Herschel would establish himself in America during that time. Freda would come to a new life, a good life. Those plans went up in smoke. Freda and Herschel had just come back from an evening walk to find Cossacks beating her father to death, bludgeoning him, his body blooded, his limbs nearly flattened. All this to the delight of the marauders. In an upstairs window were her 2 sisters and her mother watching, trying to hide from the Cossacks behind a curtain, trying to be quiet to muffle their crying. Herschel had to pull Freda away. Her first instinct was to run to her father, then to run to the back of the house to save her mother and sisters, but there was no hope. The Cossacks set fire to the house. Once the father was beaten near to death, they chose to let him watch his house burn to the ground as he died, to watch it as his wife and children burned in it. They didn't know how many children were there, that the oldest daughter was able to see this just from beyond their view. Over the next week or two, friends and neighbors hid Freda and Herschel. Fear reigned through the community that the Cossacks would be back, and worse, that they would learn that they had missed Freda while exacting torture on her father. For whatever reason, they had singled him out, if there was reason at all. Everyone counseled Herschel and Freda to leave. The second Saturday night that followed the incident, they were paid a visit by a rabbi. Neither Herschel nor Freda were from observant families, but they knew this rabbi, the leader of what had been the largest temple in Gomel before the Troubles. All the Gomel Jews knew him or knew of him. How he knew where Freda and Herschel were, at which house they were hiding, was not questioned. It was understood. He was the rabbi. He would know these things. He was the tzaddik of Gomel. He sat with them and their host. Putting his palm on her head and looking right into her eyes, he said, "First, Freda, Baruch Hashem, we all mourn with you the loss of your family. We mourn the circumstances. I know you do not attend services. We love you no less, Freda. While you are gone, we will say the Kaddish for your family, each of your family, for the year. We will say the Iskadal for you 3 times a day as Orthodox do, for this, a special Kaddish. We will appoint somebody daily to do this. If no one can do it on a given day, Freda, then I will do it. Baruch Hashem." Freda looked at the rabbi in shock, Herschel in shock and appreciation. Herschel recalled the rabbi from when he'd been his father's helper, doing carpentry work as a child on the synagogue. The rabbi had been a wonderful customer. He'd paid his father well. He understood carpentry would endure unforeseen snags, adding time to the job, pushing back the completion date. Herschel's father often said the rabbi was one of the best, most patient, understanding customers he'd ever had. He'd welcomed the young Herschel as a carpenter's assistant, never patronizing him as a child, always treating him as another crew member. The rabbi handed Herschel an envelope. Before Herschel could open it or look inside, the rabbi asked him, "Wait, please, Herschel. I have more to say to Freda. Freda, I know this will be painful to hear. Your family could not be buried the next day as is called for, and there are no true remains for your mother and sisters. We have your father's remains. Freda's sobbing turned to near hysteria. Herschel wraps his arm around her, embracing her head into his shoulder. Freda, I know your father's Hebrew name. Pardon me. Your mother, your sisters, I don't know their names. Can you tell me their names, their Hebrew names, your mother's parents' names? This, too, elicited more sobbing again, compelling Herschel to press Freda against his chest. The rabbi explained, we will put your father in a coffin. Your sisters will each be placed in the dark blue cloth with the gold star of David woven on them with a blessing in their Hebrew names. If you don't know their Hebrew names, Freda, tell me their Russian names, and I will presume one on them. We will give them a proper burial in our Gomel Russian cemetery, Jewish cemetery. We will honor them, Freda. We will treat them with love. We will give them everything we are capable of. We will do this for you and for us. He let that sink in for more than a moment. Freda sobbed. Herschel wept. The rabbi, too, shed tears. It was as though time stood still for them to take this in. The rabbi broke the silence. The envelope, Herschel, it is a mitzvah we can do for the two of you. This is from the Jews of Gomel, not only the synagogue, the congregation, my shul. It comes from the people whose houses you've stayed in, from almost every Hamish family in the community. All the shuls, even the ones that have shut, all the rabbis know what happened. Everyone has heard. We know, Herschel, you plan to leave Gomel for America, even for Freda to join you in time. That is not a fair plan anymore. The two of you must leave together. That envelope has more than it will take for a passage for the two of you. You must leave as soon as possible. Freda, tell your host the names if you can. I know you are too upset to talk now. I understand. We love you. We do not want your suffering to continue any more than it will, or than it must. Being here will be worst for you. It is our duty as Jews to help each other and to help our fellow man. This is our way to help you. Before they could respond, he whispered, I will marry you now if you like. They nodded yes. He performed the ceremony, then sat. With a wry smile, he told them this was a marriage he would never forget. Marry again in America. There you will get a ketubah, have a celebration, dancing, break the glass. The joy you deserve. This ceremony tonight is for your sanctity and devotion as a Jewish couple. The rabbi stood, placed a hand on either one's head, and said the traditional rabbinic blessing. He added, go as soon as you can. Go before it gets worse. Pardon me. Go with the love of us all. Go make yourself a good life. With that, stoic as a rabbi could be in light of the tragic events that led up to it, he turned and left.
Oh, that's so good. Dramatic.
Wow. Make me want to be Jewish.
Yeah,
outstanding.
Oh my.
Really powerful.
Strong.
I just makes me want to cry.
And look, Dean, you're just now, you're under time too, which he was not this afternoon. So good editing on you. Oh, that was very nice. Thank you very much.
Really moving.
Really good.
Yeah.
Dean Lansman.
Like as we've done before, you can continue to tell Dean things that stood out for you, things that mattered, and just what you thought of his work. And we will move on now to our friend. I can't see you in the little picture, but I'm sure if you say something, you'll come forward. We're moving to Mary Lou Strange. Mary Lou Listerman Strange. Oh, there you are. I'm going to mute everybody else, and then I'll unmute you. And just while I'm doing that, I'll give you guys a little background on Mary Lou. She's a graphic designer and former staff writer at the Cincinnati Enquirer. Yay, Cincinnati. It's a good paper. I grew up in Cincinnati, just by way of background. And 5 weeks ago, she was frustrated, lost, trying to write a memoir. And writing is an outlet where she discovers something about herself and what influences the shape that she takes. So with COVID-19 and other tragedies in life, she was hoping to write to bring comfort to others. Through this class, she's begun mastering her strengths and taming her areas of struggle. I've seen that. And your confidence in your willingness to be courageous with your creativity. If the pen is mightier than the sword, Mary Lou says, I want to use its power to shake us out of complacency and into defiant hope and radical love. Stab any of us, I believe. Anyway, you are unmuted. You can start at will, and I will set the timer. Velvet gloves.
Yes, velvet gloves. The traumas began when her loving uncle crossed the precious boundaries of her young body. She was too young to understand the dread and offense. Years later, she was too exhausted to remember all of the whys. She believed the world would be better off without her. It only took moments to drink the antifreeze. She screamed through the phone that she didn't mean it, apologized, and then she was gone forever. Fate stole his power, chipping away his pride and resolve. He believed his career and home life was now a sham. He could not bear the discovery. One squarely aimed shot, another dear friend was no more. I too have suffered from depression. I've survived 3 suicide attempts. I was not only in emotional pain, but physical and spiritual as well. With each assault I took against my body, what I wanted more than anything was for the pain to stop. Killing oneself is not cowardice. Suicidal reasoning is complicated. Depression can be underdiagnosed, misdiagnosed, improperly treated, and it can become an incurable disease like diabetes, Parkinson's, or cancer. The difference is when someone dies by suicide, we debate the action using hushed tones of bewilderment and guilt. We always want to know the reason for death, no matter the cause. Perhaps knowing the answer makes us feel better or safer, allaying fears of our own finite life. Poet Dr. Maya Angelou said, "People who commit suicide do not approve of themselves for living." Have you ever felt the need to approve of yourself for living? Since COVID-19, I know we're more aware of our breathing. Most of us want to live, and we'll do whatever we need to do that. Masks, gloves, anything. You have suppressed anger, Dr. Hawkins said to me. The anger you carry is deep in your subconscious and below, where it's festering. Anger? I wrestled with this word. I've been called joyful and bubbly. But he was right. Behind the smile was a desperate plea. You were never beaten with fists, he said. Your parents, teachers, and others used velvet gloves. Velvet gloves sting, but you're not quite sure what you felt. They leave no bruises or marks to be seen. The heart and mind bear the welts, rising from unkind words, narcissistic abuse, and unintentions, yet reckless intentions. Confusion and trauma destroy the ability to trust one's own identity and thoughts. I reflected on what he said. I understood what he meant. Velvet gloves beat over and over against tender hearts until a person takes the gloves from the other and begins to flog themselves, as I did, with doubt, rage, and fear. I wish doctors could see depression the way they see a broken leg on an X-ray, or we see it in a secure thermoplastic splint. Maybe we would be understood better if our brains wore patches like protected eyes, or could see like a person with a wheelchair or white cane with a red tip. Would we be able to act more quickly and feel compassion? Maybe one day an MRI will delineate depression clearly and doctors will be able to aim laser energy directly at the marked source to heal it. But is it in the heart or the mind or both? I've been thinking about my friends a lot. How has the quarantine exacerbated depression and other mental illnesses that we will not know about until it's too late? For those of us who attend church, synagogue, or mosque, do you greet one another with a sign of peace? When we could shake hands and give a hug, were you comfortable with that? When I've seen people from other cultures bow in greeting, did you know that they are bowing to the holiness and light that they see residing in the other person? Now I wonder, do they always remember why they are bowing or bending? Or have their actions become rote? Do we see the widow or divorced person who lost love? Do we walk right past a scruffy young person in the throes of puberty, filled with doubt and confusion, possibly being bullied for being different? What about the homeless or the addicted? Are they quietly seeking help from us with their eyes? Perhaps it is you or someone you love sitting among us here on Zoom or FaceTiming elsewhere. Perhaps they have forgotten how to laugh. I am a survivor of depression, and if I had the power, I would will each hurt person to be well. What are we going to do today to spread love and hope? How has the quarantine stifled and revived us? I have heard singing on balconies. I've seen Broadway companies on Facebook Live. I've participated in online classes like this. Today, we have heard stories from an eclectic group of people I have come to admire. I admire their wisdom and their mirth. The knowledge gained here has helped me understand my brain even more, and my approval of myself has grown. I'm thrilled to be alive and share my story with you. For you are created from the universe, from its structure of mystery and wonder. You matter, all of you. You are important, you are worthy of living and breathing the air and all of life's blessings. I'd like to suggest today that when we sign off and remain in quarantine for a bit more, we become more aware of one another. Tell someone they matter. Because when we do that for each other, we discover the same truth for ourselves.
I love that. Okay.
So
you're missing your.
Yay!
That's awesome.
Lou, wonderful.
Powerful.
Wow.
Powerful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for speaking up.
We have just one left, but I don't want to cut this short because Mary Lou, that was amazing, and it was.
Thank you.
It was helpful, heartfelt, but so helpful to all of us too. That look in, that vulnerable look in. Woo. Okay, and the last one. I think it is testament to all the readers who've come so far that we still have more than 90% of our participants listening after an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 14 minutes. So I want to just kudos to all of you. We have had some amazing topics and some amazing readings, or we would have 8 participants right now. So hats off to all of you. Okay, I am reading from a novel I wrote some years ago. It's called Praying to Oprah. And I'm Julia Roberts, by the way. I am the host of tonight. I'm the host of the class that these guys have been participating in for the last 5 weeks. I get up and run the run the writing prompt every morning at 9, and it has been as good for me as it's been for them.
All right, you succeeded in making me cry.
Oh, okay. I don't know who that was. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Continue to give Mary Lou feedback in the chat. Okay, so my little theory of this whole course is every writer gets stuck, great writers get unstuck, and I've been so moved and amazed by the things you guys have written for this reading so far. So I'm not going to set my thingy because I know I'm under 7 minutes and because it would be distracting. So shut up. I get that little privilege. Okay. Okay, so this is an excerpt from a novel I wrote a few years ago, just the cast of characters so you know. We have Cricket, who's the main character, and it's written in first person. So I is always Cricket. Her husband is Peter. She has 2 daughters who are teenage 20-year-oldish, and their names are Jasmine and Maya. They all live with her mother, Ruby. And last but not least, we have two visitors who are the next door neighbors, Clara and her son Sage, who's a friend of Jasmine's. Don't worry, it's pretty clear, but I just wanted you to not go, what, when you got there. Message machines. I invited Clara and Sage to stay for pizza, I told Peter as I left the room. I'll get Mom and the kids. I got halfway upstairs when I heard the music stop in Jasmine's room. I decided to listen and see what Jasmine and Sage were up to. So I was sitting, listening. I'm not sure what I thought I would hear, but you can't trust teenagers. I put my head down on the top step. It was carpeted and clean. I know that much for sure. I almost forgot I was listening. I felt like I could sleep right there with my head on the top step. With my one ear on the carpet, I could hear muffled voices. It was like a dream. Jasmine and Sage were in with Ruby. There was a bathroom between the two rooms, and they had evidently walked through to her room. Maya brought me these new machines today, I heard my mother say. My body sagged into the step. This one has 42 messages. Sage looked around the room. What's with all the answering machines, Ruby? Oh, I don't know. I just started listening to old messages and it got me thinking. She drifted off. When Grandpa died, he was using his cell phone and he was leaving Grandma a message at the time, Jasmine explained under her breath. If I hadn't known what she was telling him, I could never have made out her words. She was whispering, but she needn't have bothered. Mom can hardly hear anything when she gets into a daze like that. Would you like to hear the message? Ruby asked Sage brightly, as if she were offering him a cup of tea. My heart ached. My limbs and head were heavy. I didn't want to stay and listen, and I didn't have the energy to move. And there it was, my father's voice, cheerful as always, like there was some joke he was in the middle of, and you were just going to love it. Despite myself, I smiled. Ruby, 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 it started. How are you, Ruby? I visualized him up in his big garbage truck, up high, pulling the wheel around slowly, as he did so often. He had aged well. He looked fine in his silver flat-top haircut, with his twinkly blue eyes. Always a looker, my dad. He was glad to be old, he told me. Let the young ones ride around holding the back of the truck. I'm through risking life and limb. They enjoy the ride, I enjoy the drive. He liked to say he was a smooth operator. No sharp turns, didn't throw anyone off the truck. Ruby, 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 said the answering machine again. How are you, Ruby? I'm making my way back to you, girl. My dad was 70, and he could still make Ruby feel like she was 16. I'm just calling you on my cellular phone to let you know I'm knocking off early. I'm worn out today. Don't know why, but my arm is tired like it was yesterday. So I figured they keep asking me to retire. I can at least take an afternoon off. Now, don't worry, I'm fine. I just want to come home to you for lunch. Doesn't that sound nice? I knew what was coming. I remember hearing this the first time, even the second and third time. The next few seconds were alarming and heartbreaking. They lasted a lifetime. Woo, my father seemed to say, and even at that moment he seemed delighted, as if someone had just surprised him with a rose or a cake with candles. I've heard that little ooh so many times, and it never sounds like what it really was. They say he had a heart attack at that very moment. There's a long recorded crashing sound when he must have slumped and lost control of the truck. He ran it into the dumpster and never took his foot off the gas. The truck, the dumpster, my father, and the two young men riding on the back headed straight into the back wall of a restaurant on his route. It records every sound, the crash, the scraping noise of the dumpster on the asphalt, the yelling of the two men who jumped off and ran up to the window to call out to my dad. I guess they thought they could wake him. Their voices were distorted as horns sound when you drive past them fast. Norman! The truck kept moving forward. Norman! It was slow and drowned out by all the other noises and commotion caught on tape. Finally, my father's head hit the horn. It was a high, tinny sound. I felt a sort of relief each time I heard that. It was over, the suspense. My dad was dead by then. Each time I hear that message, I can't help but hope. My father's voice starts out so full of love and personality that I hope, stupidly, that this time it will end differently. The next thing you hear is the people in the kitchen, screaming, scrambling to get out of the way of the falling wall and the sudden truck appearing in their workaday world. Each of the big pots and pans clang to the floor with a deep bell tone, then skitters along, making a sound like a wind chime in a big storm. You could even tell the people in the kitchen were Hispanic. You couldn't hear words, just panic. and one poor woman commenced chanting or praying, and ay caramba could be discerned clearly. And then finally, beep, the mechanical voice clicks on. End of message, it says, so distinct from all the emotion, noise, and chaos that preceded it. There was, of course, silence here on the second floor. Downstairs, I could hear Clara and Peter putting out plates for pizza, and after a little while, I could hear muffled voices resume in my mom's room, Sage saying, wow, not knowing what else to say. I snuck back down, halfway down the stairs, and called up to them, dinner, please come down now. That message lasts 4 minutes and 38 seconds. The answering machine provides that little factoid, as if we need more information. The time was 11:32 a.m. according to the device. It was used as his time of death on his death certificate. My mother has listened to that 4.5 minutes of tape at least 100 times. I was still standing in the bottom half of the stairwell. I felt I had been asleep for an hour and not like I'd left my husband and my friend in the other room less than 5 minutes earlier. I had completely sweated through the outfit I was wearing. No wonder, sitting in this airless stairwell. This night is getting unbearably hot. Unbearable. So that's it.
Wow.
Beautiful, Julia.
Thank you.
Yeah, very sensual.
That was good. Oh, sad.
Especially
Good.
audible. I could hear sounds and the voices.
So here we are, you guys. We just pulled off our first 7 works in progress.
Yay.
And I really want to thank everybody for coming and for participating and giving the writers feedback. And just has been a really great evening. So thank you all. I'm going to ask R7 to stay behind just so we can take care of each other in a nice way. This is the end of our program. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming.
I loved it. Loved seeing your beautiful faces.
Bravo, bravo.